Hey everybody, Jack Loves Painting here with a new video. Today I'm going to show you a little bit of modeling instead of painting. I've got this carapace from one of my new Night Titans that I'm getting it ready for a 9th edition. So excited. I've got some two-part sculpting epoxy. I've got my sculpting tool, a little silicone tool with a wedge tip and a ball tool. Ball tool is going to come in super clutch for this technique. And I've got my hobby knife just for helping out in different aspects of this. And I'm going to show you guys how to sculpt detail like this onto your vehicles. So you've probably seen a lot of cool things like raised chaos type detail, some warp type detail. It's really easy to do if you're a fan of chaos. So I'm going to show you how to do these two types of details with that raised chaos star and some of those little warp pustules. Starting off, we're going to mix our two-part epoxy. I honestly can't tell you what brand this is. I lost the label a long time ago, but it's basically very similar to green stuff. It's just a little bit easier to work with and cures a little bit faster, but all of these techniques will work with just about any two-part sculpting epoxy I can think of that you can pick up at your local store. And I'm dipping my fingers in some water. When I mix this up, it helps it cure a little bit slower and be a little bit less sticky and more malleable. And the first step is going to be to roll out some little shapes. So I've got a little sphere and some little like worm shapes, some sausages, snakes, whatever you want to call them. And the first step is going to be to just gently place those on the model, kind of press them onto the resin or plastic so they stick in the general outline of what we're going to do. So this is going to be a raised like chaos star kind of shape, and so I'm just gonna press that in, and if it doesn't stick or adhere automatically, like don't worry, we're gonna be pressing on this and shaping it, and that'll help it stick to the model. We just kind of want to get it set in place. If your epoxy is really sticky like green stuff, again, you can either lick your fingers or dip them in some water, or have a little paper towel next to you with a few drops of olive oil on it and just put your fingers or sculpting tool in that. That works really good. Just be aware that that olive oil kind of needs to be washed off at the end, because it won't really dry or set. It'll just be like an oily residue on the model. But I know a lot of people that really enjoy using the olive oil as a non-sticky surface or a lubricant for their sculpting. You just got to wash it at the end. It works really good. But I'm a savage. I'm just gonna lick my fingers or lick my sculpting tool, kind of the old style way. It doesn't bother me too much. But if that's something that you don't want to do, or you're worried about the taste of the metal or the epoxy or whatever, then you can use some water or some type of cooking oil. Just gonna put the little point of our star on this spike here. Just again, gently press it into the model. I don't want to like flatten it. I want it to be the same little snake sausage shape, so that we have some nice raise off of the surface, some nice raise detail. All right, so it's been about 5 to 10 minutes. I recommend waiting about that long. Once you've pressed the stuff on there, it gives the epoxy, you know, not a long time to cure, but just a little bit to kind of stick to the surface. It'll help it stay stuck to the resin. And then I'm going to take our ball tool here, and as you can see, I'm just doing a lot of repeated short downstrokes to kind of scallop the surface of our epoxy and pull it down and kind of stretch it out over the surface of the resin here. Really, really simple technique. Like, you don't have to have the hands of a surgeon to do this. I'm just kind of pressing it down onto the model and then doing short little downstroke motions to tweeze and pull it, kind of scallop that surface. And it gives us that look of that sort of raised welt of a welt, like a huge weld line, or the warp of the chaos effect where this is raising up out of the metal. And you can do it like fleshy if you want to. You can kind of texture it if you want to with maybe like a toothbrush or something, press some texture in there. I'm just going for, you know, your generic kind of chaos warp look, right? And this is also going to help our epoxy get really good and stuck to the resin. Like, this stuff ain't coming off of there once it's fully cured. You have to think of the epoxy almost like a gluing agent, like a really, really thick gluing agent. That's kind of what epoxy is made for. It's just this is good for sculpting. And again, like if I feel like my ball tool is sticking to the model a little bit too much, or it's like pulling the epoxy up off of the resin surface or the plastic surface like I just did right there, just make sure to re-wet your sculpting tool with a little bit of water, or you can just lick it, or the olive oil or cooking oil like I stated earlier. And yeah, we're just going to do this over the entire surface. You want to make sure that on sharper areas that you use those downstrokes to kind of tweeze out and pull a sharp point rather than just smashing the end of it so it's rounded. That's really the only kind of finesse part of this. And you just want to make sure that if you see that epoxy kind of raising up off of the model, that you gently press it back down onto the resin, so that way it has a nice flat bond. Increase that surface area. And yeah, I'm just going to keep doing this for a while. When I get to those areas where I have the two different pieces of epoxy crossing over each other, I just want to gently push those into each other and continue to use our little downstroke motion to tweeze and pull it out onto the resin. You can also kind of push and pull a little bit on those connection points to have a little bit of a mound or a spike raise up in those areas too if you want more heightened detail off of the model. Works pretty good. Now, if you're working with green stuff, I recommend doing a little bit of this, kind of roughing in your shape, and then setting it aside for a good, I would say 10 to 20 minutes, depending on your mix, because there is instructions for green stuff if you want it to cure a little bit faster and remain harder once cured, or cure slower and remain softer once cured. So just follow those instructions for your mix and just kind of think about how long you want it to sit. But a general rule of thumb when working with green stuff is once you kind of roughen your shape, you want to let it sit for about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe as long as 20 minutes if it's got a little less hardener mixed into there. And that way you have your rough shape and you can come in with your sculpting tools and really define your shape without it falling apart or smudging or undoing what you just did because it's just too soft. That was probably the biggest thing that I had to learn the hard way when I initially started working with two-part epoxy for my modeling projects, is it doesn't really work instantly, especially with green stuff. You gotta let it set for about 10 minutes or so. Just, like put it down, go watch a video, go grab some lunch, something like that, and then come back after about 15 minutes. And it should be hard enough to where it's not going to just fall apart and you're not going to lose your shape, but you can still press fine details into it, especially if you want to do really ornate details or very small things where you need the epoxy or the green stuff to hold its shape a little bit so that you can do some fine detail work. You got to let it sit for a little bit. The main reason I switched over to this epoxy is because it's what they sell at my store. And it also cures a lot faster, so the work time is a lot less. And it only takes maybe about an hour to 2 hours to set up and really be hard enough to where I don't have to worry about my fingers pressing into it and ruining my work. And I can just paint right over it. I really wish I could tell you guys it's super unprofessional of me not to know the brand of this, but I've had this same package of epoxy for about a year and I've just lost the label. I have no idea what it is, but it's pretty industry standard. You can't go wrong. So with our Chaos Star finish, I'm gonna do this little like chaos pustule, especially if you like nurgly type stuff. It kind of looks like a growing tumor with like pox holes, and I don't know what any of that stuff is, but it looks cool, right? So I'm just gonna press that little sphere onto our model and then do the exact same technique, bunch of little downstrokes, kind of scalloping out those edges, pressing it down into the model, blending it out, and then I'm going to use my ball tool and press in some little divots to create that look. Three little shapes for Nurgle, praise grandfather, and then kind of go around the edges again one more time just to make sure. And then if you want those to be a little bit deeper, I have a little piece of plastic hard stick, And I'm just going to gently press that in to make those divots nice and deep, like holes, without ruining the ball joint press in that we did before. You can use like a skinny brush handle or something like that. Super, super easy. You can have these all over the place and it looks cool. And that's pretty much it. Like, this is a really quick video. This technique is super easy. Just about everybody can do it. Hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll catch you next time.